Hello, my name is Catherine Choi, and I would like to welcome you to the American TESOL program. As a teacher with over 10 years of experience, I have a little idea of what kind of difficulties you might encounter in your future careers. So I would like to today talk a little about how to teach phonics and everything that goes into it. I personally love teaching phonics because it's a very rewarding experience to see your students start reading words, sentences, and then move on to the books. So without further ado, why don't we move on to the table of content? So I know this might be a little overwhelming for you right now. As you can see, we have a lot to cover today, but let me assure you that we've done our absolute best to compress it all into a tiny package that consists of just 18 slides. So let's begin. We're going to start with phonics instruction and talk about everything that might go into it. Second, we're going to move on to phonemes and graphemes, which I'm sure perhaps some of you heard about before. Number 3, we're going to talk about decoding and encoding phonics. And number 4, we're going to finally talk about phonics lessons in action in classrooms. Number 5, some of you might face challenges and exceptions to your teaching methods, and this is what we're going to talk about here. Number 6, phonics resources. As a teacher, I know how difficult it is to find teaching material sometimes, and that's why I've prepared number 6 for you here. Number 7, classroom assessments, because it's important to provide feedback to our students. That's why we have assessments for you as a teacher and for students and parents. Lastly, we're going to talk about continuous professional growth, because as teachers, we have to constantly learn just as our students do. First, I would like to talk a little bit about effective instructional stages for young learners in TESOL and phonics. Here we're going to cover language development stages, key learning and acquisition theories, multisensory learning, and of course the roles and responsibilities of an ideal educator. Let's take a look at the knowledge of young phonics learners' language development stages. First, we have the early stage, which lasts from about 0 to 5 years of age. And here, of course, you would absolutely have to focus on the very basic vocabulary, the very basic sounds, and the very simplest of the sentences. This would probably have to consist of about 2 to 3 words, no longer. And at this stage, usually language acquisition is primarily done through interaction and play. Moving on to the middle stage of childhood, this would last from about 6 to 8 years of age. And as you can tell probably, these students would start developing more complex sentences. They would be able to develop better grammar understanding and of course conversational skills. These children, these students would already be able to communicate with you and express their ideas to the fullest. And of course, they would have an increased ability to understand and use language rules. Lastly, let's talk about the late childhood stage, which would be from about 9 to 12 years of age. Here, of course, we are going to notice refinement of language skills. We will see and hear more advanced vocabulary and comprehension of abstract concepts. This would, of course, be accompanied by the ability to read and write more complex texts. So you can proceed into a lot more of essay writing, which I'm sure they would hate. And next, for phonics instruction, let's talk about understanding key learning and acquisition theories. Theories are important because they let us as educators understand where exactly do we belong. And first we have here behaviorism. Behaviorism is based or emphasizes a lot of repetition, a lot of reinforcement. And in behaviorism, learning is viewed as a response to a stimuli. Stimuli would be you as a teacher, and everything that you provide and everything that you ask of your student. Second, constructivism. This is where learners build their own understanding and knowledge through their own experiences and self-reflection. Constructivism would be more of an independent study and is fit for independent and perhaps more mature students. Social cultural theory is, of course, developed on the social interaction as well as the cultural aspect of the student's life. And here, of course, it depends on where the student is from. If we are talking about Korean students, then we would have to understand everything that goes into the cultural aspect of living in Korea and being educated in Korea. Finally, we'll talk about Krashen's input hypothesis. As you can notice, this is a hypothesis and not a theory yet. However, this emphasizes the importance of constantly but comprehensively challenging your students with perhaps a slightly harder level above their current ability in English. So this is important because if the student is not challenged, they won't be motivated to progress. But now that we know all of the acquisition theories, why don't we talk a little bit about the roles of you as an educator? If before in the slide you found something that is closer to you and you realize that you perhaps are an educator who likes to stimulate your students, then here we're going to talk about your roles as an educator. You might be a facilitator. Facilitator is someone who obviously supports and facilitates the learning of their students. We're talking about guiding, we're talking about learning through engaging and meaningful activities. We're going to talk about a lot of activities a bit later, so you'll see some examples of what a facilitator would do. Second, we have a motivator. And motivator is obviously someone who encourages and motivates through probably more of positive reinforcement than negative and scolding. So yes, be nice to your students. Motivator, yes, like I said, inspires students to be in a more active role in their learning journey. So motivator would be right there next to the students. It would be easier if you're in a smaller classroom as a motivator, because if you have a classroom of 25 students, then it would be quite hard. Third, I apologize. Observer. Observer is someone who monitors or watches over the student's progress and adjusts instruction based on their individual needs. And obviously for an observer, a lot of activities that consist of small group activities or presentations or speeches would be very helpful, because as an observer, you have to also, as a motivator, approach your students on a more individual basis. Lastly, if you're a communicator and you like to build relationship with your students, not just your students, we're talking about parents, we're talking about colleagues, we're talking about anyone around you. If you like to build relationships and you're more amicable with students, then you might be a communicator. So this is where a lot of your knowledge is getting passed on to your students through communication. Okay? So now let's talk a little bit about your responsibilities. So roles apart, there is something that we all as educators would have to pay attention to, and this is something very important that makes us teachers. So first of all is obviously positive environment. No one is going to learn in a negative environment where they're constantly scared and threatened. So, positive environment is something that makes your students feel safe, welcome, and perhaps your classroom could be a little more inclusive if you're a funny teacher, if you're getting down to the student level, anything that makes them feel comfortable and motivated to learn would be a positive environment. And then planning your lessons, of course. This is something that you've probably thought about even before you had your first student, because planning lessons is the daunting part of teaching, because nobody wants to end up not knowing what to talk about or what to teach. And so planning and implementing lessons is something that has to do with choosing appropriate, age-appropriate, development-appropriate material, something that has an engaging activities involved in it. You want to be also aligned with the language development stages and learning theories if you are planning your lessons. So please make sure to remember everything that we've covered so far. Assessing progress is another very essential thing that helps your students learn and you to understand how to help them. So in assessing progress, obviously we have to figure out what level our students are. We have to use a variety of assessment methods to evaluate students' understanding and the extent of their progress. So we're talking about report cards. I know most teachers dread writing report cards because they're being sent to the parents, and the parents might ask from you as an educator if you manage to include a constructive criticism in, and the parents might actually ask from you and say, well, you're the teacher, how come my student doesn't, or my child doesn't know this? So yeah, make sure that you assess carefully. Last one, professional development. Professional development is something that we as teachers have to do constantly. Just because you're an English educator and you're teaching phonics doesn't mean that your students are not going to approach you and ask you a question about space or something about geology, botany, and so on. So professional development has to do a lot with you seeking professional opportunities, challenging opportunities, as well as growth, your career growth, everything goes into it. And yes, keep updated on the practices of TESOL and phonics. I'm going to help you with that.